welcome back to the booth here at the Magic the Gathering World Championships. I'm Marshall Sexton. That's Simon Gertzen, and we've got one more round of draft to bring you before we transition over to our standard portion of the tournament. It's round number 10, and in the feature match here, we have players, two different records here. We've got Wyatt Darby on 6-3 right now, still looking in pretty good shape if he can win this last one to put together a run for the top four. Sitting across from him, though, two-time world champion Shahar Shenhar is sitting at 5-4. Very much with his back up against it. It's not impossible to get into the top four at 9-5, but it's certainly not guaranteed. And that means that he's really going to want to try to squeeze one more win out of this draft deck before going back to a more known quantity with his standard deck.
Yeah, absolutely. And those two players are 2-0, which means they've been battling from 4-3 and 3-4 respectively.
Okay. Yeah, not the best start for Shahar yesterday, but kid's got some fight, and we're going to see right now if he can finish off Wyatt Darby and earn that 3-0 in the booster draft here before he moves into the battles. Let's take a little look here at what they're actually playing, Simon. Wyatt Darby, we got a chance to look a little bit at last round. If you're watching along live with us, he's on a black-white deck. What about Shahar?
Shahar is on black-green, and his deck looks stronger to me than that of Darby. If I see 3 Thallid Omnivores in a black-green deck, that's already a deck on its own.
And here we go. Knight of Malice to kick things off. And when you see your opponent lead things off with the plains and you play a Knight of Malice, you're pretty happy about it. Urza's Tome is going to be the play for Darby, and I think Shahar's probably going to be pretty happy about that as well. He's going to chip in for 2 and follow up with a nice 2-3 here. He's got 2-drop into 3-drop. He's got the Deathbloom Thallid, which of course is a 3-2, so lots of numbers here. All swamps, by the way, for Shahar.
But quite nicely punishing the card advantage play of Wyatt Darby, who is going for more of a late-game strategy. Although his deck is really... It's kind of like a hybrid. He's just trying to play decent cards, a solid curve, but it's not very clear what his main strategy is.
Yeah, I hope he has something to play this turn, because Gideon's Reproach would be okay, at least to take down the Deathbloom Thallid. But as it stood, it looked like he wanted to play a Pegasus Courser, which would have been pretty disastrous, just allowing an attack for 6 with no profitable blocks in sight. So he's instead going to say, I'm going to be a little mana inefficient and use a Gideon's Reproach rather. And he's still going to take a couple of damage and leave behind a Saproling token. So not a fantastic trade-off, but he'll take it.
And Shahar doesn't have a 4-drop. If he had a Thallid Omnivore in that spot, Darby would be in huge trouble.
Now, the good news for Shahar Shenhar is that he does have a play with his 4 mana. The bad news is it doesn't really affect the board. So he's going to play Dark Bargain on end step before drawing his card for the turn. He decided to discard or not draw the Pierce the Sky here. As, well, he doesn't see any flyers right now, so he said, I'll just take these other 2 spells. He's got Settle the Score in his hand. It looks like he's firing it off on that Paladin, potentially.
And those players, of course, do know each other's deck lists, so Shahar has a really good idea whether he wants that Pierce the Sky or not.
All right, looks like he's decided, no, you know what, you can have the Paladin anyway. It can't block my Knight of Malice profitably. I'm just going to go for the long game here and play another Dark Bargain, perhaps looking for a land drop here.
Yep. Really wanted to get those land drops going. Has a Fungal Infection that could actually be quite nice here.
Wow, that would be really good. He could trade it off for the Paladin on its own. 2 toughness is pretty rough in the format. And yeah, he's actually going to be proactive. If you're going to make that play anyway, he'll still have that option. But he could get the job done while sneaking in an extra point of damage, and that's exactly what happens here. These little tiny plays can really add up over the course of a game in Limited here, and Shahar Shenhar, he knows what's up.
Yeah. And that Saproling getting blocked wouldn't have been bad for Shahar in any way.
No.
We already mentioned that these 2 players are 2-0, but when I see what Darby has put on the battlefield so far, that does not look like a 2-0 deck to me. 4 mana, 4/2s we are not a big fan of. Cabal Paladin is not something I consider 3-0 material. And also, you know, main deck, Invoke the Divine. Pegasus Cursor is good, but you want to be aggressive. It's Darby has to deliver something here, otherwise the black-green machine is going to eat him alive.
That's right, especially because next turn could be really big for Shahar. Remember, he just cast back-to-back Dark Bargains.
Yep.
I mean, his hand is now going to be stacked with spells, especially after he just played one land after doing that. There's a second green source off the top of the library, too. And
Sometimes when you're a bit behind, you're like, okay, maybe he has a bunch of lands, maybe not so much, not so much action. Maybe I have time to draw out of this. But after 2 Dark Bargains, you know that there is good stuff coming.
Wow, look at that hand from Shahar. He's got Urgaros at the top end, which he can play right now if he'd like. He's got a nice attack here, though, with his Knight of Malice, and you may as well leave up Fungal Infection, maybe even Ancient Animus, depending on what nonsense could happen here. Instead, he's just going to get in for 3 and probably just play Urgaros, right?
I agree. No real reason to hold it back.
Boom. Urgaros, the empty one.
Nice synergy as well with the Ancient Animus in his hand.
Yeah, it's also just really good on this board, right? It just looks good here. It can attack cleanly past the Pegasus Courser. And if you start to get Urgaros rolling, well, you're not really coming back from that. So the rich get richer here. Shahar Shenhar, who was already ahead on life total and on board, just added 6 more mana worth of legendary creature to that. And now it's back to Wyatt Darby. He's got to come up with some plan here. He's not on the front foot on the aggressiveness front, so that's not going to get the job done. Short sword with the trigger from the Cabal Paladin is going to knock Shahar down to 14.
Yep. Problem is turning the Pegasus into a 2/4 is not going to stop Urgaros.
That's right. So he's going to play Whisper Blood Liturgist. A nice turn for Darby to build out some of the stuff that he's got going on, plus a big attack. So he could get in for a total of 8 this turn, unless Shahar decides that he wants to chump block. But you still got to feel like Shahar's looking to be in pretty good position here.
Yeah, but I think you have to respect the Cabal Paladin at this point. You can see that Darby has just put a bunch of historic cards into his deck. So taking 4 damage here, going down to 8, I would be a bit concerned. Especially if you attack with your flyer, suddenly the Pegasus is live again.
All right, so both creatures are going to come in the red zone. This is a huge attack. 7 damage against an opponent who's already down to 10. One potential thing we could see here is Wyatt Darby using the Invoke the Divine over the course of the next turn or two simply to gain life. He would probably end up having to kill one of his own artifacts unless Shahar gives him a nice target for it. But that is the type of thing that could buy you potentially an additional turn, a whole turn cycle.
It can win you the race.
Right.
It's also usually not an instant that's really on the top of your mind when you're attacking or blocking, because you're more thinking about the Gideon's reproaches, the removal spells, the combat tricks. So that can be a pretty nice gain 4 out of nowhere.
So we're going to see Whisper chump block here.
Whisper wasn't doing much on this battlefield.
It's true.
It was a 4-mana 2/2 that triggered Historic, but that was it. And I'm a big fan of Whisper, but on this board it was really not great.
Still before regular damage. Yeah, these two.
So he's going to make sure to do this before damage happens, because since Urgaros is a legendary creature, it's going to get a +1/+1 counter, so that's an additional damage that Shahar has gotten. And again, you've seen this. He's just been chipping away with more and more, pressing his big advantage on the board, but also taking advantage of the small stuff. It's really impressive from Shahar. He's very dialed in today. The top of the library for Wyatt Darby gave him a Gideon's Reproach.
That's good against Urgoros for sure. 5-4 currently. It's really bad against that Thalid Omnivore. If you've ever tried to kill that with Gideon's Reproach, usually doesn't work well. It's even worse against Knight of Malice.
So Short Sword's going to get equipped by Wyatt Darby, but the writing may be on the wall here for Wyatt. There's Settle the Score from Shahar Shenhar. Can Wyatt even survive here? He can go up to 9, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
No, and he can, I think he has the Gideon's Reproach for the Urgoros, but then the Thalid Omnivore kills him.
Right. So that is going to be game number 1, going to Shahar Shenhar. He got ahead early, and he was able to protect that lead. The Knight of Malice doing very good work for him, attacking multiple times into the different types of blockers that Wyatt Darby put out, and he never really found an answer for it. Yep.
Was on the back foot from the very beginning, and it didn't really manage to play the more powerful cards in his deck.
Yeah, that's right. We see Shahar Shenhar taking down game number 1 there with his quite powerful deck, it must be said. Take a look at the feature match area here in Las Vegas. We're going to take a short commercial break after game 1 here. When we come back, though, we'll have more Magic. Don't go anywhere. Welcome back to the feature match area here in Las Vegas, Nevada. We're here for the Magic the Gathering World Championships. I'm Marshall Sutcliffe on the booth with Simon Gertzen. Thanks so much for joining us for coverage of Dominaria Draft. We're in the last round of the limited portion of our event. We will be transitioning to Standard after this round and playing all the way until we cut to a top 4 later this afternoon. But for now, we've got business to attend to. Wyatt Darby's on the left-hand side of your screen. That's Shahar Shenhar on the right. 6-3 is the record for Wyatt, having a very nice performance thus far and looking to hold strong. But he's got his work cut out for him because Shahar won game number 1 in pretty decisive fashion. And it's going to be on Wyatt to try to pick up 2 games in a row if he's going to keep that 3rd loss as his only one. So off we go.
Wyatt is on a mulligan to 6. Just got his scry on.
Okay. And here's a divest to perhaps break up the plans of Wyatt, although it looks like only one choice. There's a pseudo creature there called the Cavalry. Of course, creates 2/2/2 Vigilance Knights, but you can't actually take it with divest. So Dominant Trapper, the only option.
I think the key here is actually seeing 2 Gideon's Reproach.
Yeah.
That is something you can easily play around. Darby actually playing 3 in his main deck, and deck lists for the limited portion and the constructed portion are known.
Land. Nobody's doing anything. And there's a Krosan Druid now for Shahar. Knight of Grace now for Wyatt Darby. Pass the turn back. Doesn't look great here. Though it is difficult for Shahar to get rid of.
Yeah, and it has quite a good chance at growing throughout this game. So definitely one of the better creatures in Darby's deck. In this matchup in particular.
Shahar's content to just stay home, though, with the Krosan Druid as it's holding off the Knight currently.
Shahar's plan with the Druid was actually to hold off the Knight tokens made by Call the Cavalry, but Darby didn't even find that land.
Shahar, of course, knew about Gideon's Reproach, not only 1 but 2 of them in hand for Darby, and said, well, if you want to spend your turn getting rid of this Krosan Druid, I'm in for that.
That's a trade that Shahar is happy to make. He has a lot better creatures in his deck.
He also has a lot more lands on the battlefield. There's land number 5 for Shahar Shenhar, where Wyatt Darby has stumbled on 3. Not uncommon when you mulligan, but this could prove problematic if he can't find his lands, though. Just as I say that, he draws a swamp.
Big fan of Shenhar's deck. Especially the card draw that he has means that he's just playing a really smooth game.
You're going to see that here, by the way, Simon. He's going to cast Dark Bargain after Darby plays Call the Cavalry, resolves it, and then passes the turn back to Shenhar. So while that turn didn't look like much when Shahar passed the turn, he did get 2 of his best 3 cards off the top of his library. And now with land number 6, he's really set to do some damage.
Shahar needs to put some blockers down now. And he knows about at least 1 more Gideon's Reproach. And Darby's deck, despite the mulligan, looks a lot stronger than in game 1, I have to say.
Destroyer's familiar. Not doing a whole lot thus far, though. If Shahar can use it to maybe power out a couple of things, that could change that. But the 2/2 not lining up well with Darby's board, so he's just going to attack with it, even up the life totals, and play a Thallid Omnivore post-combat.
The Familiar doesn't even do much in his deck. It's more of a filler. He has a flyer that way, but he can't be super happy to be playing that. I think it's more of a card that sometimes will accelerate his 2 6-drop legends, Urgerus and Grand the Lonely King.
So now the Knight of Grace, though, has a little inspiration going for it, so it's going to attack for 3, and there's that Cabal Paladin.
And Darby did not offer the Knight in combat because he didn't want to spend 2 mana on Gideon's Reproach. It wouldn't have been a bad trade, but like we saw in the previous rounds, he has to get those creatures onto the battlefield first.
Shahar has Deathbloom Thallid as his play for the turn. Anything else?
That's pretty good, I would say, with a Thalid Omnivore already on the battlefield.
True. He's also got Vicious Offering, and I think he's considering killing the Cabal Paladin now rather than letting another historic trigger go on the stack.
I like that. Vicious Offering is not really doing much at the moment.
Your turn.
Attack for 2, and Shahar's decided, no, I'm going to let you go ahead and do your thing. Perhaps valuing it in combat. He's going to get punished a little here if Darby wants to run out Whisper Blood Liturgist pre-combat. That will be an additional 2 damage. That's what he drew for the turn.
Shahar is keeping his options open. He says, I have a way to deal with a flyer, with Pierce the Skies, and depending on what you drop this turn, I will know much better what I want to kill with my remaining removal spells. Also, on the ground, not much is going to happen against that Thalid Omnivore. If Darby attacks with everything, Shahar knows exactly what he has to play around and has a bunch of instants to respond with.
It's funny you say that, because he kind of does. In the meantime, Darby actually drew a 3rd copy of Gideon's Reproach, and Shahar knew of 2 of them. One of them now in the graveyard, but he actually does have to, he will have to consider the possibility for 2 copies. I mean, they never play around the 3rd one, right?
I think he would, because it's a known deck list match. That's for me the difference, because you know that this is signaling something, and then once you know the deck list, it's actually easy to reduce it down to 1 or 2 cards.
Shahar wants to cast something, and he's decided that something is going to be Ancient Animus to take Whisper Blood Liturgist off the battlefield. That is a scary card to face down, especially if the game is going to go on for a while, and that might be the case here.
And Ancient Animus wasn't doing much in Shahar's hand.
No. Shahar still really hasn't been able to mount a great offense. It's just been this Joyr's Familiar attacking for 2 in the air. And he's going to pass a turn back. His hand has 2 removal spells. It's Pierce the Sky and Vicious Offering.
Yeah, one of them doesn't have a target right now. The other one, Shahar is kind of holding on to in case that Darby draws something big. Shahar is saying, I can survive this Cabal Paladin, these triggers. That's not really an issue.
Is it not?
I don't think it is. So what if Darby draws a powerful legendary? Sure, Shahar gets drained for 2, but also he still has the removal spell for the powerful card.
Look at this, Wyatt Darby. He's going to get rowdy. He's in with everything.
I was waiting for that because Darby has to push at some point.
Okay, well, Shahar, before blocks, is going to use his Vicious Offering to kill the Cabal Paladin, and now he's going to go block. Are we going to see some fireworks here with these Gideon's Reproaches?
I don't think Darby has a good Gideon's Reproach here.
He could.
So,
oh, he's going to go for the big play here.
So Reproach is 4. The Night Token deals 2. This means Shahar can either pump the Thalid Omnivore once and trade, or twice, and it will stay alive. So if Darby doesn't have something else, I think that's a good exchange for Shahar, because his Thalid Omnivore is effectively 2 creatures in 1.
But if Shahar goes for that, and Wyatt Darby springs his trap of the 3rd copy, he will actually get rid of the Omnivore, right? Be 7/7. Now this is interesting. So Shahar's going to sacrifice, which is what you had mentioned, but now Wyatt says, I'm going to think about that.
I don't like that at all.
I know why you don't like that. He should have figured this out first.
That is something you cannot afford to do against a 2-time world champion.
Right. I knew you weren't going to like that,
No,
Simon.
I really don't.
And this was foreseeable.
Oh
right?
yeah, and
That's
you
the point.
weren't in a rush.
Right.
Like, you didn't have to. You had all the time in the world to go through the motions. Actually, Shahar does go for the double sack like he was planning to do. So Darby is not punished here. But if Shahar just says, okay, damage, I think Darby is not quite in as good as a spot as he is now.
All told, that worked out beautifully for Darby. Look at the board state now.
Yeah, Shahar with a dead card in hand, far too many lands. His 2/2 flyer not doing anything.
Well, it's going to do something here. It's going to trade off for a night token. But that is going to reduce Shahar's life total in half. He's down to 4. He needs something here to even survive. And what did he find? A pump spell? Wow, that Pierce this guy rotting away in his hand was a real liability this game. Sometimes when the games get close, you just don't have the wiggle room like that. Memorial to Glory is going to get cracked, and that's why Darby picking up game number 2. So that transaction with the 2 Gideon's Reproaches ended up favoring Wyatt Darby pretty significantly, just getting both creatures off the board, including one that's very difficult to get off the board in one sweep like that, the Deathbloom Thallid.
Yep.
And he was able to ride it to victory.
Reproach turn.
Yeah.
Shahar is great. You see that? Wyatt goes, I think I missed a point of first strike damage on that reproach turn. And Shahar goes, yeah. And then just looked down and started sideboarding. By the way, Shahar looking sharp with that suit.
By the way, when your opponent tells you that they made a mistake, you just always have to respond like that. Doesn't matter if they really made the mistake. It's just...
Why wouldn't you want to make them feel better and say, no, I've done that before. It's okay.
Oh, you're an innocent...
I don't think I'm cut out for the World Championship, am I, Simon?
It's like, no, you played perfectly.
You want me to get you a glass of water? Wait, now that's actually works too, right?
Of course.
Oh, I thought you did great. I'm real proud of you. You want to go first or second? All right, we're going to get shuffled up here for game number 3. I mentioned it a little bit ago, but bigger picture here for the tournament. This is our last round of limited Dominaria Draft coming to a close here at the World Championship in this round. And once the players are done, well, they'll get a little break. But when we come back after that, we're going to be battling standard. And that is going to carry whoever it is that makes it to the top 4 of the tournament. That's going to be the way they get there.
And that's going to be crunch time because suddenly every single round matters. I mean, these rounds matter as well. You get 3 match points, just like in the final standard rounds. But then suddenly you can look at the standings and you know, I need this one more win, or maybe I cannot afford to lose one more round. And even though it's the smallest tournament that we do cover at the highest level, it's also somehow the least predictable because you don't have this experience. I'm gonna be able to draw in with X and 3. You're kind of swimming a little bit.
No, that's absolutely the case. Often, one player will free themselves from the field and make a big run, which also tends to constrict things into the middle. And right now, we do actually have that happening here. Javier Dominguez is the one who's kind of sprinting out. But we still have a lot of rounds to go, so we don't know if he'll actually stay that far ahead of the rest of the field, though. I got to say, he's got to feel pretty good, especially if he can win this last one. I think he's playing Ben Stark. Am I wrong about that?
Dominguez Stark. Yep.
Yeah, so he's got his work cut out for him, but his deck looked pretty sweet. Oh, no. Wyatt Darby kicks things off with a Drudge Sentinel for his first play of the game. That is not where you want to be in Dominaria Booster Draft. Even the Croson Druid is like, and that's one of Shahar's least good cards, though it looks like Shahar wants to try to take a more defensive stance here because he's got Dark Bargains to resolve.
Absolutely. You don't want to be trading 2 for 2 when you are going to damage yourself.
Hey, Shahar's like, yes, 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 I finally found a target for this Pierce this guy. He had it in his hand the entire game last time. He's got it in his hand again. Now, he's going to be mana efficient here and play Dark Bargain, but I tell you what, he's going to be so relieved to finally have found an answer or a target for that spell, because it had to be pretty frustrating staring down at that thing for the whole game. I mean, these games can come down to one card.
Oh, and this game absolutely did.
Right.
Because if that had been, let's say, a Deathbloom Thallid, would have been a completely different game.
Right. So Shahar's got his land for the turn. What do you got, Shahar? Knight of Malice. And he's going to play it safe here. Adamant Will is a card that's always kind of in your head when you're playing against the any deck playing white. And Shahar recognizes, look, I really don't want this thing to survive. I'm just going to main phase this, just get it out of there, and down goes the bird. So now we're back to a bit of a standoff between our two players. And there's that Cabal Paladin again.
Darby's MVP. I think he has 2 of them. Let me check. No, just 1.
Showed up a lot.
Well, he has put so many historic cards in his deck that I thought there must be multiple paladins there. 2 short swords, an Urza's Tomb, jousting lands. So basically all the artifacts he could find at the table.
Hmm. 6 lands on the battlefield for Shahar Shenhar. He's played a Dark Bargain this game, and he just says go.
Yep. You know what's better than 1 Dark Bargain?
Double the trouble. I like that.
And then you kick your second Crozen Druid to get all
really
the life
liking
back.
that.
Kicker is just amazing.
It's the best.
It's almost impossible to flood out.
All right, boxing match between Morph and Kicker.
Kicker.
Ooh, that was quick.
But what about cycling and kicker?
Kicker.
That's for me. It's the point where I'm a little less clear, because cycling also makes for very good games of Magic. We should just have both.
Okay.
Cycling cards with kicker.
Shahar's going to resolve yet another Dark Bargain.
Yeah, you can barely hold all these cards.
Looks like we have Shahar Shenhar down to 14, though. He's resolved, what, 2 Dark Bargains and 1 trigger from the Paladin? Is that correct?
18, 14. Yep.
Yep, exactly. I was thinking whether it was an attack or the Paladin, but that.
Yeah, it's funny. Shahar hasn't actually been attacked yet, but he's still down to 14.
Yeah, Drudge Sentinel is not the best attacker.
I think your first statement was probably sufficient. So, Thallid Omnivore now for Shahar Shenhar. He's slowly but surely building out his board. He hasn't been under any meaningful pressure as of yet. He's got a great long-term game plan in his hand right now with Soul Salvage. He kind of has his way with this board right now.
This does make me wonder, though, is it really worth it to attack with the Druid? If you have such a strong late game lined up, do you want to force the action a little bit? I mean, Shenhar knows what he's doing, of course, but when I have a hand like that, I've generated so much card advantage. I have the Soul Salvage. I just don't really care about bringing my opponent from 20 to 18.
That'll happen later, incidentally. All right, well, Joya's Familiar is going to go. And Darby, he says, you know, I'm tired of sitting around here. I'm going to start using this Urza's Tome to try to find some action. He doesn't have a historic card in his graveyard to exile with it, so he's going to have to actually just straight up discard Call the Cavalry. Doesn't look great on this board anyway, to be honest, but still.
Yeah, but also could have discarded an artifact so that his next activation would have been free.
Yeah, that short sword, I guess. Maybe he sees his line to victory is somehow getting in for some damage at some point, but otherwise just triggering that Cabal Paladin a bunch of times.
Yeah, I think
it's a tall
that's
order.
it. Yeah, but it's still, you have to play for your outs.
Right.
And if you discard those short swords, they are not going to trigger the Paladin.
Right. So he's going to play Whisper and Short Sword this turn, so that's 4 more damage, knocking Shahar down to 10. Now, one of the things that we happen to know is that Shahar, at least down the line, could kick a Krosan Druid and wipe away a lot of Cabal Paladin activations. But that does cost 8 mana. One of the many reasons why Drudge Sentinel isn't really up to snuff in the format is fungal infection, and it's going to be used to kill it right here. Also, critically, we have to keep in mind that is a sapperling that was created, and that Thallid Omnivore can erase one of the activations as well.
Yeah. And Thallid Omnivore can be so threatening. Once you have dealt those few points, and you can see Shahar is aggressive in getting those points of damage in, Thallid Omnivore suddenly becomes a creature you have to chump block. And that's not where you want to be.
Well, this is just a mess now for Wyatt Darby because he's facing down a big attack step here from Shahar. Shahar sending in the entire team outside of that sapperling who's decided to stay home.
And 2/2 flyer, unblockable. 3/2 first strike, very difficult to block. Although you could think about a double block. And then there's Thallid Omnivore, almost impossible to block.
10.
Well, I heard you like Thallid Omnivores. Here's another one.
I don't think Wyatt Darby likes Thallid Omnivores.
I don't think he does at all. He's facing down 2 of them, and Shahar Shenhar has made major steps towards finishing this game. He's got a real game plan lined up here. Here's the Knight of Grace. He can either just grind away, but he also has Sylvan Awakening in his hand as well,
One of us had it.
which its primary function is fireball you.
Yep.
That's a little bit of shorthand there, but basically it's used to just get in for a whole bunch of extra damage on a critical turn. And Shahar looks like he's trying to set that up here.
We do have Whisper active now, but Darby only has 3 creatures in play, so sacrificing 2 of them is quite costly. Never got around to generating tokens with the Memorial to Glory.
Yeah, the mana, perhaps a bit of an issue there.
But this is how I would have expected the games to play out. I was actually quite surprised that Darby managed to take a game of Shenhar.
I am too. I think Shahar is completely in the driver's seat here. He's got now a removal spell added to his hand as well in the form of Vicious Offering. And it just feels like somebody like Shahar Shenhar is going to be able to navigate this quite cleanly to a victory.
4 blocks.
And he's going to attack with everything and still take out Whisper and really force the issue here on Wyatt. Wyatt could sacrifice Whisper plus another creature to get 1 back, leaving him with the same number of creatures.
Yeah, but this is before blockers, I think.
It is.
So that there's no kind of chump blocking, get something back,
Right.
maybe
In response.
buy a bunch of time.
But Wyatt is going to have 1 blocker left over regardless. He's decided he'd rather have it be Cabal Paladin.
Okay.
More power.
One on each of the omnivores.
Yep. Omnivore has to be blocked. And that's the difficulty for Darby. He has to represent Gideon's Reproach, and Shahar has to do the math. The Knight of Malice is a 4/3, and Gideon's Reproach is another 4 points of damage, of course, combined with First Strike. So protecting that one of the Omnivores is actually quite difficult.
Yeah, the Knight of Grace is up to 4/3.
Sorry.
Yeah. We do have both.
Yep. Shahar could actually sacrifice.
Strike damage.
Yep, so sleep.
Oh, he doesn't even sacrifice.
No, 4 strike damage.
Oh, right. 3.
Yep.
3 from that, yeah.
7.
Nope, he didn't even sacrifice. They did first strike damage, and then they're going to do regular damage. And Shahar, with that Soul Salvage in his hand, is like, sure. Just trade off a bunch of stuff. You take some damage. I can just buy this stuff back. And there is Gideon's Reproach, by the way, for Wyatt.
Shahar played around Gideon's Reproach.
Yeah.
That's why he didn't sacrifice
Yeah.
the Thallid Omnivore that was sure to die.
And he can afford to. because of this.
Soul Savage, the bird, and the omnivore.
It's going to get back the familiar and one of the omnivores and pass the turn back. Shahar slow and steady, winning the race here.
Yeah, 5.
Playing around stuff, not in a super big hurry. If Wyatt leaves the shields down for too much, then Shahar can just simply kill him with the Sylvan Awakening. Of course, the problem with Awakening is it's only the creatures or the lands you have left over after tapping the 3 mana
Yeah,
for it.
but he has Darby down to 5.
Yeah.
With 2 creatures already on the battlefield and a single blocker. That's
Game.
exactly what Shahar was hoping for.
Yeah, that's it right there, right? You can just 2, 4, 6, 8 plus the 2 and the 3 and the...
That's lethal.
Yep. Wyatt Darby with just Feral Abomination on his side. Sylvan Awakening is going to leave him dead.
Yep.
Shahar Shenhar awakens the lands and sends in the team, and there you go. That is 6-4 for the record for Shahar, correcting a tough start yesterday, and we could see our 2-time world champion on one of those rampage runs through Standard coming up here to maybe get the job done and put himself into another top 4. He certainly dressed the part. See if he can battle. Shahar seems very dialed in today. Wyatt Darby's going to pick up a loss here, but you know what? He only had 3 losses on that one, so now he's got 4. These players are the same. We've got Gregors Kowalski and Brian Brown doing. Looks like this one just finished up as we were about to come in. Cancel that order. We're going to game 3. Wow, they're taking their time with that one. They just finished game 2, Simon?
That's a long time.
Ooh.
Let me get the deck lists.
Yeah, let's take a look at what these 2 gentlemen are up to here. What kind of nonsense and shenanigans could they be doing if they're taking that long?
We actually saw BBD in the draft builder.
Oh, right,
with
right.
Paul Cheon, so
He's on black-white, right?
Yeah, he likes that color combination. It feels like...
What you can use for the helm. Is this for the move?
What do you think about it?
I'm not the biggest fan of black white, but that's also because I think a lot of people are trying to draft it in general, and I just tend to stay away from those archetypes that are the most popular.
You don't want to fight that fight.
No, if I don't have to, but of course if you ship me good black and white cards, I will take them.
I will not do that. Let's take a look here at, so Kowalski's on green-black with the mountains, the 2 mountains.
We saw Kowalski's draft.
That's right.
So
We did. They might not have.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's the green-black splashing red for Daragas and Goblin Barrage.
That's right. Deck looked very solid to me, although I did have some quibbles with the main deck configuration that he decided to go for. He's got 2 Gaia's Protector, and he decided to play both of them, and 2 Gift of Growth, and he decided to play both of them. I kind of liked, like, a good example here, Simon, of the approach. The 2 different approaches that his build gave him was, there's a fungal plots. He's just not playing it at all. And that made some amount of sense because he's got Soul Salvage in the deck too, and they kind of bump into each other a bit. But you know how it is when you have a mentality of, I'm going to go for this type of deck. He's got, for example, 2 copies of Krosan Druid, but he only played 1 of them.
I would have put Fungal Plots and Krosan Druid in my deck before I even consider Gaia's Protector. So that's actually the most surprising part of the deck building decision. However, I think this was very well drafted, and it is a good deck despite the Gaia's Protectors.
They're trying to pull that thing down, the deck. But they didn't. The deck's actually quite good. On the other side of the table, we mentioned Brian Brown Duin's deck as the players get shuffled up and ready to go. And I actually misspoke. It's Islands and Plains earlier, Simon.
So he did switch up.
That's right. We were watching the first part of the way through, but I do remember seeing the graphic that we had on the screen for the end there. And he ended up, remember, playing the two ops and the 2 divinations. I think Raf Capuchin was a big push for him to go into that direction. But he's got some good stuff, too. He's got a Blink of an Eye. I like that a lot.
He has Icy Manipulator, Traxxas, Scourge of Croak, and Urza's Ruinous Blast.
Yeah, that's right. He actually has a lot of ways to untap Traxos as well. That could be a big card to keep an eye out on when we get into game number 3 between these two gentlemen, because, boy, if he gets Traxos down, he doesn't have a hard time untapping it. He's got a Voltaic Servant for the combo. That's the easy way to do it. But he's also got cards like Juggernaut, 2 Pardic Wanderer, Howling Golem, Icy Manipulator. I mentioned Raf Capuchin as well. That's a lot of ways just right there to get the job done. He also has a Baird in his deck.
And
that
white
will do
blue,
it.
white blue
Teshar,
Historic is the scariest deck, the scariest Traxos deck.
easily. Yeah, white, blue, white, black are the ones you don't want to see if your opponent plays a Traxos. So let's see how this is going to play out. First things first for Grzegorz Kowalski, Adventurous Impulse. He found a mountain. That's pretty good. He needs that at some point during the course of the game. Llanowar Scout opt for BBD on end step here.
Who actually does have a Plains, but didn't reveal it yet, and wants to cast double opt. So
Okay.
even better reason.
Double opt with an island feels probably pretty good with a keep. You're going to find what you need one way or the other. Kept that one. Draws his card for the turn. And he's just going to say land go. Wow, it looks like Kowalski gets to go off here. He can actually use his Llanowar Scout.
And that's great in his deck. If he ever gets to do that.
He did it. There it is. He gets to put a land into play off a Llanowar Scout. It almost never happens, to be honest. But, boy, this is powering out quite a draw now from Kowalski. He's just going to attack for 3. Play an Item Malice. And we got a little surprise Raf Capuchin here on end step from Brian Brown doing Doa. My guess is that Kowalski will not be surprised at that, especially given that he kept back the Llanowar Scout. You saw that hesitation there.
Absolutely.
So smart heads-up play there from Grzegorz. He didn't want to run his 1-3 in because, look, he's not putting in a land into play with it. He just didn't want to throw it away into a possible Raf Capuchin, which seemed, I don't know, obvious might be a little strong, but at least likely.
Yeah, so Llanowar Scout actually not doing that much here. The ramp effect hasn't materialized. And BBD gets to play a really nice draw-go game where he gets to flash in most of his creatures.
In the meantime, 2 3-powered creatures hitting the red zone. Grzegorz says, trades, get your trades here.
No blocks.
BBD declines.
11.
Wow, so he just gets in for 6. Down to 11 goes Brian Brown doing.
Sure.
And there it is. Grun the Lonely King. What does Brian have? He's got to have something. Wow, that's not much. Joyous Familiar. I mean, at least he used up his mana, but he needs answers, and he needs them quickly because Kowalski is producing some very threatening cards at this point, and BBD just doesn't seem to have a whole lot going on. Land go. Oh, that was Dargaz off the top, was it not?
It looked like it, yeah.
I think he's only got 6 lands right now, though.
Okay.
And a fungal infection in hand.
Right. This might be one of those times where we see Grun not attack only on his own, though. With only 2 creatures in there, are both, definitely worth killing.
I think Kowalski does respect Raf Capuchin here because BBD does have a ton of mana untapped. All the historic spells in his deck are live. You don't want to just run into some weird Traxos, untap it shenanigans.
Okay.
And BBD is jump blocking.
Yeah, and exactly as you said, Simon, the respect of Raf Capuchin's static ability there. Pardic Wanderer being flashed in would normally be a huge game-swinging play, but boy, it has been Grun the Lonely King kind of dominating the feature match area today, hasn't it?
Yeah. And the Knights, also super impactful. Knight of Malice.
Yes. Finally, though, it will be stopped. Is this land off the top, though, for Kowalski? It is. And that's going to unlock the potential of his hand here, especially. There he goes. No, he's just going to attack. Just going to keep it up.
Double block.
So I think we're going to see an adamant will from Brian Brown-Duin with this risky double block, but this is kind of what you need to do, and he needs to decide which creature it is that he wants to keep, and he's going to keep Partic Wanderer. The party never stops for Brian Brown-Duin, and he's looking to keep it intact. Now, will the how does the math work out here? Does the fungal infection actually let Grun survive this?
Yes. It was 10-10 against 8-8. Now it's 10-10 against 10-10.
Oh, no.
And that is the best fungal infection I've seen in a long time.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a blink of an eye in response to at least potentially strand Grun in hand, though that's not going to work out if he does go for it. So put that back. Now, this does mean he gets to keep his creatures, which, of course, is really important. But that forest in hand says, ha-ha, gotcha. And he's just going to replay Grun the Lonely King. And Brian Brown-Duin is facing massive pressure from the Pole Gregors Kowalski.
Yep, but this is how you play it. You make the risky block, you play the combat trick, but you have a backup in blink of an eye.
Yeah, that was a smart play from Brian Brown-Duin. But the problem is, Grun is still there, right? Like his problems are still very, very real.
Go.
Oh, but he found an answer. Icy Manipulator that he can play at instant speed. Not that that matters a whole lot, but still, that is an answer for Grun.
Every time you see these players, if they have even the slightest opening of getting an attack in, you will see them attack. Because that Revka Passion was holding back Lanavar Scout and the Saproling. That's not nothing.
And look at this. Daragaz Reincarnated hits the battlefield. Not going to take advantage of haste, though. It's hard to play around instant speed Icy. I think if Gregors knew about it, he would have just main-faced Daragaz, and that would have benefited him greatly. He probably didn't anticipate this play. It's a weird one, but he does get punished here a bit for that. You know, he figured, well, I'm only going to want to attack with Grun anyway, so I may as well go to combat. But like I said, it's a little bit of a punishment as he limited his options on attacks and kind of squandered the haste ability from Daragaz.
I agree, and I think that only makes sense if you're playing against counter magic, which I don't see in BBD's deck, so a little bit surprising.
Yeah, it may have just not considered. I mean, Icy Manipulator, instant speed. I give him credit to know these interactions, but that is just a tough one to see.
I expect more, Marshall.
I know you do.
I always expect more from everyone.
That was Urza's Ruinous Blast off the top of the library, but as we've seen time and time again, it doesn't kill the cards you really want to kill.
No, it also kills your Icy Manipulator.
Yes, it does. And there's a kicked Krosan Druid now from Gregors Kowalski. He's going to get 10 life. Now, Brian doesn't look like he has a reasonable game plan here as far as getting damage in, so that may not matter a ton. Wow, BBD not running hot here. He plays Divination and finds Plains. He has Urza's Ruinous Blast in his hand. He can cast it. That's a hurdle that you often don't find the players getting over. He simply doesn't want to because it's actually worse for him if he does. And now he's just stuck in we call it the abyss, right? Where Grun is attacking and forcing you to get rid of one of your creatures every turn. Now, technically he could take a hit, right? He's at 11. Grun's only attacking for 10.
He can also chump block with Partic Wanderer and then set up the Ruinous Blast that would kill the Wanderer anyway.
So a couple of kick spells here for Kowalski, although neither of them has been exactly what he wants to do at this point, effectively adding a 2-3 to the board and more lands when he's already got enough to cast anything in his deck. Still, we're rolling. That was Traxos.
That's a good card. Is it good enough?
I don't think so. So the problem, he can cast it and then use Urza's Ruinous Blast to untap it, leaving himself with 10 power and 10 toughness to block Grun. But look at the rest of the board.
Well, the rest of the board most of it gets swept away by the blast.
That's true, except for Daragaz.
Maybe BBD can trick Kowalski into attacking with more than one creature?
One card in hands.
Because then he actually gets to ambush the Grun.
He does. If he can get Grun in, it's just a 5/5.
Yeah.
Still, the problem is Daragaz, right? Because remember, the Icy Manipulator will be gone.
This is the main issue. Yeah.
Ugh, what a tough spot here.
If it said non-historic permanence,
You're right. That would be a little different, but here in Dominaria, that ain't how it works. So we're going to see some kind of cool stuff that you don't get to see very often, but I just feel like Gregor's Kowalski has just overpowered Brian here.
now he's hoping, please attack with everything.
Yes, just send in
Please.
the team. And you know what? It's interesting because Gregor's, if he doesn't, it's not a lethal attack.
And also, there could just be a random chump blocker. There could just be a Skittering Surveyor in BBD's hand, and then you are wasting all this potential of your creatures. And the combination of Thraxos plus Urza's Ruinous Blast is what punishes you for attacking with everything.
Now, this plan is still contingent, though, on Brian finding an answer for Daragaz on his draw step, right? And look at this. Gregor's Kowalski is having none of it. He's only attacking with Grun. The good news for Brian, that means it's not lethal. Wow, this is some seriously high-level play. Really great stuff from both of our players, trying to get maximum edge out of this very close situation that they find themselves in. And Brian Brown-Duin needs some help, and he needs it badly. That Divination yielded no spells for him last turn. He drew Befuddle. I don't think that changes anything dramatically here, but it does cycle, so it could be something else.
It doesned help you kill
Right.
any of the relevant creatures. That's the issue.
That is a major issue. Phyrexian Scriptures in hand for Kowalski. He draws himself a Gift of Growth.
Tap Daragaz.
You can see how BBD is like pretending that he's not sure what to do with the Icy. He really wants to get Kowalski to somehow misstep here, to lose.
What does a misstep look like at this point?
Attacking with multiple creatures.
What if he just attacks with 2?
Then the Grun is a 5/5.
Okay.
It is a big difference.
But then what happens?
Then we Ruinous Blast.
Yeah.
And we try to ambush the Grun.
We eat the Grun, and then we pray that the top of our library gives us some way to deal with Daragaz. That's the line.
Yep.
Okay.
There's even a funnier attack, which is the 5 non-legendary creatures. Because you're saying, I have a feeling you have an Urza's Ruinous Blast, but I want to threaten lethal this turn.
Oh, look at this. Gift of Growth just to untap Daragaz.
Jeez. Beginning of combat, your opponent uses Icy.
Yep.
Still beginning of combat. Gotta have that stop.
That's a major problem.
+4/+4, 11/11.
It also has trample. I don't see a way out at this point.
No, it's legendary, so the Ruinous Blast doesn't do it. If BBD can't bounce it, he
He
already
can
used
befuddle
his,
into something.
he already used his Blink of an Eye. That's probably the biggest problem here.
Yeah. And that's going to do it. Brian Brown-Duin, with no outs left in his library, extends the hand to Gregor's Kowalski, who has been running it up all day long. He is really putting on a show at this point and looking to be in good position here to make a run. He was 7-2 coming into this round. He's now 8-2 at the World Championship against some of the best players in the world. Welcome back to the booth here in Las Vegas. Marshall Sutcliffe with Simon Gertzen. That is going to do it for our limited portion of the tournament, which means we're going to be taking a break for the players. And when we come back, it's time for Standard. We'll see you right after that.